especially in the delivery of targets in capital-intensive areas such as housing, health, trade, investments, and agriculture. For all of us, it will be a big win for devolution if devolved units move fast to seal accountability loopholes as periodically flagged by reports of the Office Auditor and the two committees, that is the Senate Committee on PIC and PAC. For all of us partners in the devolution space, time has come for us to walk the talk in adopting a friendly, united front in addressing many issues that routinely arise as we implement devolution. This is the spirit the Senate and the Council of Governors exemplified when they firmly resolved going forward at a joint inaugural high-level meeting a few months ago to work in synergy for the success of devolution. Let's harness and nurture collegiality amongst us and make the great dream of devolution work for us as a country. In the words of the American author, speaker, and pastor John Calvin Maxwell, he said, "Teamwork makes the dream work." Let us be a team as we push devolution to the next level. I thank you, and may God bless you. We also have the members of the National please be upstanding so that we acknowledge your presence. Members of the National Assembly. Those are the members of the National Assembly. I may not have your names, but we welcome you to the devolution.
Counties have been trying to grow their own source revenue. Indeed, there's been growth, and in fact, if you look at it from when devolution started, 2013, 2014 to 2021, 2022 financial year, you find that there's been an up and down. But in the year 2018, 2019, the county's revenue collection globally was at 40.3 billion. Now, 40.3 billion may sound a good figure, but looking at the 40.3 billion against their own targets of that year, which was the best, you find the target that year was 53.9 billion. So on a percentage base, they reached 74.7. However, if you look at a study that was done by the CRA in collaboration with others, we came up with what we call the potential that the counties can raise. And the potential is at 216 billion. So a lot of scientific and research and different ways of assessing that figure was put in. So you find we are still way below. In fact, that would be a figure of about 18% in terms of performance of counties against their potential. And that potential then would factor what Governor Cecil is saying. Are we doing any value addition? What are we doing to improve the revenue of the counties? And I think that's where the CS was also alluding to. Are we at our optimal? How can we get both levels to work towards increasing this revenue? And maybe at this point, let me try to demystify the myth that the more the counties get, then the less of the equitable share they get. No. The equitable share is provided for in the law. However, if you collect more, then you're better off because you can now expand on your developments and whatever other projects you may want to develop. You asked me about the challenges. One of the challenges with the on-source revenue, that is the revenue that the counties collect, is the weak revenue legislation and the late enactment of the laws. The counties are still relying on the old laws that they inherited from the local authorities to collect revenue. And they do collect revenue, but they expose themselves to the risk of litigation because they are not, if a Kenyan doesn't want to pay that revenue, then they have a right to go to court. So that contributes heavily. Another one is that limited forecasting. Now, counties do their forecasts, and because they have their budgets and they would wish to enhance their budgets, you find they use the own source revenue as a balancing figure, in the sense that they anticipate to collect that money to finance their budget, then they don't collect that money. Now, when they don't collect that money, for example, if you have a budget of $1 million and your own source revenue is 300, and you execute your budget to the entire 1 million, but you only collect 200 million, then clearly you have a deficit of 100 million. So what happens? This is what actually leads us to pending bills. This is a huge challenge because unless you collect the entire 300, then you're not able to execute your entire budget. So why do counties have this? Why do they have wrong estimates? It could be sometimes deliberate with the hope of having a bigger budget, or it could be that they are not able to forecast correctly and accurately. And that is where the Commission on Revenue Allocation comes in. We have come up with tools, guidelines, capacity building to ensure that the counties are able to forecast their revenues in an accurate way. Now, I may not go too much into the others, but I would wish to at least talk about the database, especially the property rates. Property rates is a low-hanging fruit. Also, the business licenses, some of these revenue streams are low-hanging fruits. If you look at property rates, this is a revenue that you can actually estimate at the beginning of the year and know how much you're going to collect to the shilling. Why? If you have a rate payers data, you know who your payers are, you know how much they are supposed to pay for the land, you should be able to estimate how much you're going to collect. But there's a challenge, and I think the CEO, the group CEO of KCB, you did allude to it yesterday that there's no title to properties. And that not only affects accessing loans, it also affects the fact that you can now not charge a rate because you do not know the properties that you have out there. So it is very important that we assist the counties, and it's something we are looking forward to have it in our strategic plan, that we must support the counties to update their valuation rules. We must support the counties to identify what properties they have. But again, this is not only a county function, because some of the properties that are in the counties actually are titled by the national government. So we shall need support of the national government also. Now, most importantly, the biggest challenge, again, is these fragmented revenue management systems. The counties had to collect revenue. So some have done a great job. They've gone ahead and automated their services. However, some are at the mercy of the vendors. Some have automated and the systems are not reliable. The management system is expensive. So they are spending quite high percentages, 5–10%, just managing the revenue collection. This is money that could have been plowed back to assist the counties in collection. So what does CRA recommend? Because the function of CRA is more of recommending. Even the horizontal, the vertical, we recommend. So what happens after that is a function elsewhere. So we are recommending that we have an integrated county revenue management system. In fact, we are requesting the counties to agree with us that though they have their own other systems, when we do have, because the National Treasury has set up a task force to look into how do we have this integrated county revenue management system. Once, because they are also mandated by law. I think the PFM law section 12E gives powers to the National Treasury to develop and design financial management systems. So if we do have an integrated county revenue management system, then the counties can, based on the assessment and the type of system they have, they could adopt or customize their system and onboard the integrated revenue management system. Because this is a system which will assist us in ensuring that we have standards, because by the time Treasury will come up with this system, we are looking at even Public Sector Accounting Standards Board coming on board to assist in ensuring we have standards. The revenue streams may not be the same, but that is the role of CRA to assist in coming up with revenue systems that can enhance the revenue. So what we're saying, if we have this system and the counties agree with it, number one, it's going to be cheaper. In fact, it may not have even a cost implication. Where it is hosted, those are details. But if the counties on board on a system where we are on the same platform, I believe that is going to ensure that we increase, the revenues go up. And we want to appreciate the counties that have taken the trouble to automate their services, because through manual processes, as the governor has alluded, we have lost a lot of revenue through that process. So I would recommend that that system should be in place, and that we should be able to all on board, the counties should on board on the system. There's still a lot to say, but maybe we shall discuss as we go along. Thank you, Session Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. That's really, you painted the picture, and I like the 3 points you've raised. One, legislation. Second, you've talked about forecasting, and you've talked of a couple of databases, and then you brought in the technology. I want us to close this topic, but some reflection from Your Excellencies, the Governor of Kakamega and the Governor of Embu, on these potential challenges, but from a solution perspective. What are some of the things we can do to address these challenges as highlighted by the CRA Chair?
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to appreciate the proposal of having an integrated county revenue management system, because it provides a platform which will enhance revenue collection, especially in those counties that don't have a digital platform per se. The only issue I wanted to raise, Chair, yesterday, the President, of course, confirmed that counties have received the allocation for the month of July, which is very much welcome. We're now looking at a predictable and timely release of monies to counties. And that is something that, as governors, we are very much aligned to that. However, we still have some institutional challenges with the commission, or rather the control of budget. Most of my colleagues here will agree with me that, yes, the monies were released almost 3 weeks ago to the county revenue funds domiciled at the central bank. However, for the counties to get that money, you require a minimum of 2 weeks. So one of the recommendations which may be a take-home from this conference is we really need the control of budget to onboard the question of digital transformation. Let's have administrative and institutional reforms at the control of budget office so that when funds are disbursed to the account revenue fund, we need to have approvals automated as opposed to having our CECs and chief officers going to camp in Nairobi for the money to be released to counties. Otherwise, I want to agree with the recommendations from CRA, and for me, that's the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the governor has spoken my mind. Of great importance is really automating the entire requisition process of getting money from CRF at the control of budgets. The amount of time taken by our officers to go and push for the release of money is a lot of time, and it's also expensive because these officers must stay in Nairobi and pay for their accommodation while they are pushing for the money. And I think it should be automatic that once we've requisitioned, then the process of approval should be automated so that we don't have to follow for that money in Nairobi in person. The second thing, obviously, I'm extremely delighted by the proposal by the chair CRA on integrated revenue collection system across counties. And yes, this is a thing that is already is so much needed by the different counties. And you'll find even those that have already automated their system, it's true they're paying a lot of money. And in the cases of us first-time governors, we come and find that the system is not even watertight, it's not safe, and there's a lot of leakages within the system. So we'll be very happy, Madam Chair, and of course Professor Ndongo, to have that system onboarded as quickly as is possible so that we don't have to spend any money coming up with the county-specific systems. And I think with an integrated system, there will be greater transparency of the revenue collected so that, it's not at the whim of an individual or a particular company. I think that's a much welcome proposal and should be implemented as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. Really very clear actions here that we need to document on specific actions, and they really look very actionable. Thank you for bringing that out. Keith, I'll be coming to you shortly, but before then, I want to go back to Honorable CS, and I like the challenge you brought on broadening the base. It's reflecting across, again, from the feedback from the CRA chair, and the governors take the challenge very well. Specifically, the chair cited the Finance Management Act and Section 12. How can Treasury support devolution, or how can Treasury support devolved functions in performing their task, and especially some of the issues that have come up? What would be the role of Treasury, and how can that be executed?
Thank you very much. And indeed, those are very, very good suggestions that are coming up. But let me say that first, at the outset, the role of the National Treasury is actually not to supervise the counties, but actually, more importantly, is to help them or to support them perform the functions that they have been assigned to do by the Constitution. And for us, that is very, very important. And you can see, for example, His Excellency the Governor has mentioned that predictable revenue payments is actually very, very important. And we do recognize that. For example, let me give you an example. In the last just added fiscal year 2022-2023, the National Treasury prioritized the disbursements of all revenues owed to counties before the end of the financial year. In fact, this is the first time in the last 7 years or so for county governments to have all their revenues before the end of the fiscal year. And we even did that to our friends, the MPs, the CDF. And we also did that even to the elderly, the payments, the transfers to support the elderly. We did that. And we argued that it is better to do that because it's going to support our economic recovery process. But I would like maybe to even go back to that to say that, look, counties would like to see how they prioritize their own budgets in terms of placing own revenue, because this is where we are. But we would like also to understand what are the challenges of own source revenue that can be generated. I think, Your Excellency, Madam Cecilia, you mentioned about even tourist sites. For example, we couldn't even come here in Eldoret like yesterday because we could not even have space at the hotels. Even the flights were not a problem. Flights are not, they are exogenous to the country, but at least accommodation was very, very critical. But in an effort to see how we can alleviate budget deficits at county government level, the National Treasury has spearheaded the development of the national policy to support the enhancement of own source revenue. And the policy proposed is to actually enact a number of reforms. And some of them are currently being implemented, but some of them include even bills in Parliament. For example, the development of county government's revenue raising process bill 2023. We also have the National Rating Bill 2023, and this is going to unlock the revenue from property rates. And again, this is what you said, they are low-hanging fruits, and Madam, this is very important for us. These low-hanging fruits need to be picked, but they can be actually be affected once we have passed this bill. And another initiative is actually the policy for automation of revenue collection and management. And I do think that this is some function that we can help the National Treasury, and the National Treasury in collaboration with the CRA, the COG, and other relevant institutions are in the process of developing an integrated resource revenue management system. CRA, you mentioned that. But what we really want is to make sure that all counties use this. The first session that we had here was about digitization. And I can tell you that we have come a long way with digitization, especially some people like us. But for me, I like it because it forms a very good base for even payment system. And payment system can be used across, even tax revenue payments, the tax revenue payment system has been used. I think this process is going to be very, very important. I'm told it's at advanced stage, and we do believe we are going to get there. We're going to get there because it will give us some strength in terms of how financial management system becomes a cornerstone of an efficient public finance management regime. Because if we don't have this efficient use of resources, adhere to public financial management law, we are not going to get anywhere because resources are always going to be questioned in terms of how they are being used. One of the key PFM reforms is that we want to make sure that we enhance accountability and transparency that is prescribed by use of both levels of government. And that is why the Integrated Financial Management System, IFMIS, has reformed the core of PFM systems so that the budget formulation and even execution becomes quite transparent. And I do believe that we can actually overcome some of these problems by just doing that. But having said that, I may come back to the three of the points that have become quite problematic, because I can point out that because they become a source of failure. Let me talk about the pending bills issue. some of these have legacy issues. But they arise from liabilities of, that is, because they have legacy issues because they arise from the local authorities that were there before the devolution started. But counties have continued to accumulate pending bills. And we have to resolve this because essentially some of these pending bills that can be verified are actually debts owed to suppliers and even so many of the MSMEs. We need to resolve that. The second one is pension payments. Last week we had 2 days with the relevant Senate committee brainstorming on what we need to do on pension payments. It is actually very sad that only 3 counties in the totality of 47 countries that have no arrears. And we were asking, because we asked the CECs for all the counties to join us, and we had a 3-day session, and we wanted to see what kind of magic and what solutions. And we came up with formidable solutions that we want to make sure that it is done. See, Mheshimiwa Dede said that sovereign debt or public debt is the first charge. By the way, the second charge is pension payments. So it means that the county governments are making a very serious or grave mistake for not remitting the pension dues because people who retire will have problems. The third problem is the huge wage bill. By the way, if all our resources are going to the recurrent spending, then we have no resources for investments. And so it means that we'll continue to be at the same level or even go below the capacity is going to be constrained. I've always argued and argued very strongly, even in times of crisis, governments should always allocate resources to the development budget because they raise capacity for future growth. But once you do not allocate budgets to development spending, then you limit your future capacity for growth. It's the same thing with the counties. That's why it becomes very, very important. Finally, the financial reporting. And of course, this is occasioned by ineffective internal controls, and this is improper use of prescribed financial management system. So if we observe some of these 4 constraints, we can actually move out of the kind of quagmire we are in at the county level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable CS. I'll be coming back to you, Honorable Dindi. I'll right now to allow Mr. Keith, the Country Director, World Bank, to highlight the approach that World Bank takes when you're identifying the financing and the programs. But most important, how are you measuring impact and the right or the positive change that is desired today?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to begin by saying it is an honor to be up here, representing not just the World Bank, but the whole community of development partners here, many of whom are here today, and almost all of whom have invested in Devolution. Kenya deserves great congratulations for Devolution. This was a risky undertaking 10 years ago, but it has proved transformational. And we in the World Bank, along with others, are very proud that we invested in this early on, seeing the potential it had to redress many of the, not just the political, but the economic shortcomings that were going to pull the country back. In fact, we have made a big bet on Devolution as an institution. And we've worked in every county with a growing portfolio over the last several years. Our total portfolio in Kenya now exceeds 1 trillion shillings, about $8 billion US. And fully 1/4 of that, 2 billion, goes directly to devolved functions. And another 3 billion benefits the counties through multi-sectoral programs that bring benefits to multiple counties at one time. We do this for a simple reason, because we know that we cannot achieve the broader goals that we've agreed with government for Kenya without working heavily at the county level. And those goals are very simple. Number one, to raise productivity and job creation, which are both too low to drive Kenya's next stage of development. Number two, to reduce inequality, which is currently too high to enable the next stage of development. And third, to boost resilience to climate shocks and natural disasters, which are both too high to protect Kenya's next stage of development. And I want to highlight one of these in particular, which is the growing impact that devolution has had on improving inequality. It has the potential to do even more, but we are seeing progress in inequality in Kenya thanks to this dispersion of opportunities, the creation of more nodes of growth, and other benefits that come with devolution. And this is crucial right now as Kenya becomes a middle-income country to avoid an inequality trap. There's always been a spatial dimension to inequality here, and that has always been unfair to those who've been marginalized and left behind. But at Kenya's current stage of development, it is now not just bad for those who are left behind, it will be bad for all of Kenya. So to put it more positively, improving this will be good not only for those who are lifted up, but for Kenya as a whole, because it will help propel its growth. Countries with high inequality experience a lot of interruptions in their growth, like speed bumps in the road. Countries with lower inequality are able to sustain that growth year after year, which is ultimately what helps to drive sustained poverty reduction, innovation, private sector investment, etc. So much of our focus here is focused on leveling the playing field in as many ways as we can across Kenya. We do this through a number of ways, and I just want to highlight some of the results, because the point I want to make here today is that devolution is a very good investment. It's a very profitable investment in development terms. So in productivity, for instance, we put a big emphasis on agriculture, and in particular on improving infrastructure, strengthening value chains, and supporting commercialization. 1.6 million farmers have seen their productivity increase. We've seen productivity jump by 20 to 30% in several products, and 5 million farmers now benefit from regular agro-weather and market advisories. We have also been able to connect pastoralists to markets and to de-risking tools that will help bring more private sector support and investment in these areas. In urban areas, we are helping the counties to harness the power of the urban transition, these agglomeration economies that can support alternate nodes of growth and drive more locally driven growth. 4 million people so far have benefited from upgraded infrastructure, including 250,000 who have improved sources of water. We've also emphasized the private sector. If we're looking for alternate sources of revenue, obviously encouraging PPPs and private investment can be an important enhancement. Our private sector arm, IFC, has worked in 9 counties to move on digital and government business services and related functions. Second, in the area of inequality, we made a big focus on the 10 north and northeastern counties that have been historically marginalized. $2 billion worth of investments there, including the flagship $750 million Horn of Africa Gateway project, which is now serving 3 million people along the Isiolo-Mandera Regional Road, with all the associated asset value capture that can happen when roads are available. This has also supported primary health care outreach in all counties, and very importantly, picking up some of the themes we heard, the greater use of data and statistics with small area poverty estimates so the counties can see who they're benefiting. We've also worked, as I mentioned before, in an important area of governance for service delivery. We made good progress working with the counties on strengthening the institutions and systems that are needed, basically the ones that will underpin effective service delivery. But a lot more work needs to be done in this area. Our KUSP project created incentives for counties to put in place the urban governance structures that are envisaged in Kenya's law, and this was to help facilitate delivering greater urban services and infrastructure. But in this next phase, we do need to see the efficiency and impact of spending improve further. And finally, resilience. It is the tragic fact that Kenya will now be subject to a rising number of shocks, both climate and natural disasters. Climate change alone will have an adverse impact on agriculture, on livestock, on fisheries, biodiversity. Climate is a top priority for the World Bank globally, and that goes equally true here in Kenya. We know that water is crucial to this. I was discussing with some of the northern northeast governors this morning who all emphasized water is foundational. It's dropped 50% in the last 30 years here, and so World Bank investments are increasing in this area and are diversifying now to help reduce water insecurity. We're also working through our FLOCA program in 45 counties to help them deliver locally led climate solutions through both institutional and investment grants. And we're also going to start working to protect critical watersheds in a new project that will break new ground. So we've seen great impacts from this wide range of investments that will serve all of Kenya and which we intend to continue supporting along with our partners in the next stage to come, which will be pivotal to Kenya's propulsion to its next stage of development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith. So we're wrapping up now. I'll just go back to Honorable Nyoro. In a minute or two, what are the potential enhancements to our legislation we can do, whether is reacting to what the Honorable CS has talked about, challenge on the broadening, or even increasing the threshold. And then we conclude with some reaction from the real person who is in the forefront, and that is one of our excellencies. On all the points we discussed, what's your reaction as a governor being in the front line of service delivery?
Thank you very much again. Even before I talk about the laws that we need to enact, it is important that I give some background in terms of figures so that we actually see where we should be focusing on. Because from 2012 to 2013, up to last financial year, our counties had received from the national government around 3.3 trillion Kenya shillings. 2.9 trillion Kenya shillings of that was the equitable share. And around 370 billion or thereabout was the additional monies, especially conditional grants that we give to our counties. So once you aggregate that boniface, then once you check at the aggregate of our county's budget, own source revenue only accounts for 8 to 12%, depending on which year you are looking at. And therefore, I think more weight must be on the 89 or thereabout, other than on the others. However, there is still a lot of room for improvement on own source revenue. But I want to concentrate more on where there is more meat than the bone, which is the monies that the counties actually receive from the national government, because history is clear that over 90% has been coming from the national government. As we talk about that, we are talking about also revenue collection in terms of the national government. Why? You cannot talk about county governments in isolation of the mother and father, because all these counties draw from the national government. And in my assessment, what we make as a budget is an element of something. And I don't want to use a lot of jargons. It is an element, or the budget that we make is an element of the wealth of our country. In consequence, we call it GDP. And I'm just trying to answer you in terms of the broadening of the monies that we take to our counties as I wind up with the laws that we need to change. As we talk about GDP in Kenya now, and especially I'm talking to governors for them to also, as I talk about national government, to see where they can actually trickle down in terms of correction of revenue. GDP in Kenya, we count it or we aggregate it. Number one is primary. When you talk about primary GDP or primary wealth or primary production, most of it is in agriculture. And you'll see how there is a contradiction. That in Kenya, accounts for around 18.2%. Then, of course, tertiary, which is industry, which currently accounts for 16.2%. Service industry accounts for 65% in our GDP. Now, what is the contradiction? The contradiction is that most of the Kenyans are actually engaged in the primary production, which only accounts for 18%. Most of the on-source revenues of our county government, from sales to each other, from sales to, not sales the governor, but sales the revenue, is actually money in the primary production. Because primary production is from mining to quarrying to anything else around that. I think our county governments must find a way to also encroach on the other. Because a county government must be able to know, last year how much money did I get on this segment of the GDP? And the contradiction I was talking about is that most of these monies that are collectible by the county government actually comes from the smallest segment of our GDP. In the national level, there are things that we are doing in terms of baking a broader cake. That is why a lot of money has been put into agriculture, primary production in terms of forestry, in terms of we are now logging mature trees, and especially in designated areas. We are currently likely to also lift the moratorium in terms of mining, and I'm sure the county governments are already relating with their own revenues. As I come to the close, a collection of monies, because we are talking about money, both at the county level and the national level, you look at it in 3 dimensions. That is the fiscal dimension, where you craft policies to increase the taxation or the fees or the revenues. Then there is the administration part. The administration part especially is in terms of how much tax, the enforcement of it, the trust of the people to pay that tax, and everything else around enforcement and collection, including digitization. And lastly, as I answer your question, is in terms of legal issues. On legal issues, I would propose to the people, especially our governors, to find a way, and especially the senators, on how we can change our law. Number one, there is a very huge contradiction in how we allocate money. Why? As we talk about this year's equitable share, we are basing it on the audited and approved of 1920 financial year. I think we should go actually the extra mile and not talk about audited and approved, since the entire budget of Kenya is based on projection. And projections are done using science. I think that also the allocation, the equitable shares to our counties must also be based on the same parameter. If that was to happen, our counties currently at the same percentage would be receiving close to 500 billion Kenya shillings. And the current scenario in terms of projection, we are just at 15. But we have to hold our hearts in terms of making the GDP I referred to, which is the cake, so that instead of talking about 2.6 trillion Kenya shillings in terms of projected revenue, then we enhance that in terms of enlarging the tax base, but also consequent, we also strengthen our state so that we raise our collection of revenue in terms of GDP from the current 16%. If we just do like South Africa, 25%, I'm sure the governors here would be smiling all the way to development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Session Chair. I just want to wrap up with an observation. Number one, I agree with our CS National Treasury that the intention of the National Treasury is not to supervise counties. And we want the National Treasury to walk the talk. However, we have a miscellaneous amendment to the PFM Act, which provides for a creation of a committee that will supervise revenue collection by counties. In our view, this is going against the spirit of the theme of this devolution conference, where the National Assembly should be coming up with progressive bills to support and enhance devolution, and not retrogressive bills which are going to claw back on devolution. So in our considered opinion as governors, that proposal of amending the PFM Act to create a committee that will be responsible for approving revenue collection by counties is not a very good bill, and we are asking our senators in the House to support us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great discussion. Appreciating all your excellencies. I can now request you to sit down or back to your seats. And for your audience, thanks for the patience. We've really we've had a good discussion, and we appreciate your time. I believe that on record are very actionable proposals that go into future activities or future amendments or future things that you're going to see around devolution. I'm wishing you all a very good session or the remaining sessions and the rest of the day. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Governor. For Keharo and Chairperson of the National Assembly's Budget and Appropriations Committee, CPA Mary Wanyonyi Chebukati, the Chairperson of CRA, and Mr. Keith Hansen, the Country Director at the World Bank, and our keynote speaker, Paul Russo, the Chief Executive Officer of KCB, of course led by the moderator, Boniface Mungania, Director, Public Sector Digital Transformation, Safaricom PLC. Asanteni sana. A round of applause, please, for them. Now, please make sure as you sit in this room and all the other rooms that we're having our meetings, keep your belongings in order. But if you've lost anything, there's a lady here. Don't show them what they've lost. There's a lady here, so if you've lost something, just look for her. Go and describe what you've lost. If it's locked and it has a passcode, you'll have to open. If you've done a WorldCoin kind of thing and it needs to be opened with your iris, you have to open, and that's how you get it. My co-facilitator, Professor Karuti Kanyinga, reminding me to remind you to please visit our exhibition area. We have many exhibitors. County governments are exhibiting. We have other partners who are also here exhibiting. And we'd like you to go visit each stand. And we want you to please help us judge the best exhibition. So the best exhibitor, look at how well resourced they are. Look at how much information they're providing. Look at how relevant the information they have is to devolution. And all that, please use that to rate who, in your opinion, is the best exhibitor at this year's devolution conference. Ladies and gentlemen, we are waiting for the arrival of our guest speaker, the Right Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. He's already in the grounds and he'll be walking in shortly. In the meantime, I'd like you to watch a recap of what happened yesterday, the activities of yesterday. This video summarizes the whole day yesterday. We had very many activities. Kindly watch it.
Welcome to day one of the Devolution Conference, with this year's theme being the present and the future. We are here at the Eldoret Arboretum, where a tree planting activity will take place and the unveil of the Wall of Fame. Welcome to day one of the Devolution conference, with this year's theme being the present and the future. We are here at the Eldoret Arboretum, where a tree planting activity will take place and the unveil of the Wall of Fame.
This morning, we are here at this arboretum in Eldoret town, where we are planting trees. All the governors, all the senators, and the president will be coming very soon to plant his tree. This will be a landmark arboretum which will go into history, marking 10 years of devolution. And as a Council of Governors, we have committed ourselves to ensuring that we achieve the 15 billion tree planting that has been directed by the President by the year 2032. Since March to date, the 47 counties have planted a total of 7.4 million trees across the country.
Today marks a significant milestone as we gather under the banner of progress, collaboration, and a shared vision at the first biannual Devolution Conference.
The